TV on Sunday, they're having the
Here we,
Tango
here we go.
episode
Here we
on.
go. Here we go. Well, we had a scattering of showers and thunderstorms this afternoon into this evening. They seem to be calming down, but it's still active in other places in the east. We have another round of showers and storms for tomorrow and severe weather risk. We're going to take a look at that. Another one on Thursday, where we could get some storms ahead of some nice dry air for the Fourth of July holiday. We'll also take a look at the weekend that follows the 4th of July. All of that and so many other things here on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. And you can support the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. How? By shopping our referral link on Amazon that you can find on the descriptor to this podcast. That's right under the title on YouTube. Just use that link to take you to Amazon, do your shopping, and Amazon throws us back a little bit of coin for sending you there. It also keeps the live version of the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast commercial free. And I know that makes a lot of people happy that they're not getting interrupted by ads. So thank you for those of you who have done your shopping via the referral link on Amazon. And Tempest by Weatherflow. If you don't have a weather station, you should get the Tempest Weather Station and join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. The link is pinned to the top of the chat board and it's also on the descriptor to this podcast. If you do decide to make a purchase of anything on the Tempest website, because they have all sorts of other weather goodies, use the coupon code SUMMER2025. Because if you do, you will be rewarded with
10 big percent off, Joe.
ah, so far, no thunderstorms here, no rain. I've had some thunder a few times on and off in the last few hours, but hasn't amounted to anything. And I did see earlier, Joe, that there were some strong thunderstorms that moved across central and south Jersey. Out of southeastern Pennsylvania, there were some severe thunderstorm warnings from those. But that patchy area looks like now, when I was looking on the radar lately, that it seems to have quieted down a little bit.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right about tomorrow. Tomorrow's the day when we could very well come under maybe a severe thunderstorm watch or warning in places because we do have a more potent weather system approaching for tomorrow, which could induce some potential severe weather. And later on in the week, we've got a very, I would say, an abnormal scenario for early July, an upper level low, not just a trough or a short wave, but an upper level low pressure system that'll be passing across upstate New York and New England. That in its own right could induce a couple of showers here for the day before the holiday on Thursday. And as you just noted, Joe, for Friday, it looks great. I mean, we're going to get into a nice dry Canadian airflow, northwesterly winds, and looks like we're going to have a very nice day on Friday, a very comfortable day on Friday, the
Yeah,
4th of July. So,
low to mid
uh,
80s and dew points in the 50s.
absolutely. Unfortunately, it's only going to last for about a day or so because it looks like the humidity and the dew points are going to be rising again uh, come the weekend, the regular weekend on Saturday. And by the time we get to Sunday, it looks like it's going to be rather hot and rather humid. But at least I think it'll also be sunny as well.
Hey, did New York City get to 90 today? Harold Olson would like to know.
I don't know. I did not check the Central Park readings
All right,
um,
well, you check,
too
and I'll
closely.
just say welcome tonight to everybody on the chat board, and welcome to those of you who are lurking in the background here on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. And you can lurk in the background 5 days a week because we're here Sunday through Thursday at 7:35 p.m. Although we are going to take this coming Sunday off, but we will be here through Thursday because after Thursday, it doesn't look like much will be happening Friday, Saturday, and Sunday anyway, so that we can enjoy the 3 days off like you're going to enjoy the 3 days off. So subscribe to my YouTube channel, turn your notifications on so you don't miss us. And of course, if you like the show, bang the like button because we just love it when you bang the like button. So, do we have an answer? Did it get to 90?
Yes, we do have an answer. No, we did not get to 90 at Central Park. It fell just shy of 90, 89 degrees there. However, LaGuardia Airport did hit 90. In fact, they got to 91 today. So within the confines of New York City, there were some places that did get to 90. Newark, for example, got to 93 this afternoon.
Oh,
But again, Central
you
Park,
gotta
again,
get that,
position 89.
get that thermometer off the runway. I mean, if you're driving on the Jersey Turnpike, and if you're able to look to your side, which you really probably shouldn't do, since you should be keeping your eyes on the road, you can actually see the weather station there on the runway. Okay, it needs to come off the runway.
Yeah, and Kennedy, meanwhile, Kennedy Airport, the coolest of the places we just mentioned, 87 degrees. So 87 at Kennedy, 89 at Central Park, 91 at LaGuardia Airport, 93 over at Newark Airport. One more that I want to check here. I want to check Teterboro. That also sometimes can be a pretty hot spot as well. And what did they do at Teterboro today? Well, yeah, just like it's Big Brother in Newark, 93 at Teterboro for a high today. So 93 at both New Jersey airports, Newark and Teterboro, 91 LaGuardia, 89 Central Park, 87 at JFK.
All right, I got the watches and warnings map up. Joe's going to have the radars loaded and ready to go in a moment. Not a whole lot happening. There are a few areas that have flash flood watches up ahead of tomorrow. One is around the area surrounding Washington, D.C. and Baltimore. Also in western Pennsylvania, a number of counties there, and a couple of counties in southwestern New York with flash flood watches. We have flash flood watches in southwest Texas and central New Mexico. There are a couple of flash flood warnings going on in a few counties in West Texas. In the West, it's either red flag warnings or heat advisories that we see up in the parts of the Pacific Northwest, mainly in the eastern half of the state of Washington and in north central Oregon. Also, heat advisories for eastern Arkansas and western parts of Mississippi. So, as far as adverse weather is concerned, we don't have any severe thunderstorm watches up tonight. The severe weather that has been occurring has been in the form of isolated severe thunderstorms and not widespread activity. And as we check out the satellite loop, you still see these lightning strikes going on. But that area of storms that was telling you about that was in southern and central New Jersey has now weakened. And Joe's going to show it on the radar. But there's some lightning strikes going on in parts of south central and southeast PA right now, as well as some scattered storms in the rest of that state down into West Virginia. Also extending southward through West Virginia and into Kentucky. There's not too much happening around me at the moment. And we have some showers and thunderstorms that once again form near the Gulf Coast of Florida and move northward. So a little bit of a sea breeze front. There's an upper low that's there. In fact, if you look on the loop, you can actually see the counterclockwise rotation. The clouds are moving from south to north, from the Bahamas northward, and then north to south when you look at what's going on in Florida. Most of those clouds there moving north to south. The remnant moisture from Barry has been creeping northward into South Texas. A lot of clouds there with a few storms in southeast Texas. And the most active area with respect to thunderstorms at the moment is in Oklahoma and in parts of West Texas and in New Mexico. So, on that note, let's bring up Mr. Rayo and his radars, and he will take you around the horn.
All right, well, we'll take a look at it right now and show you what we have going on. Let me just get to the share button here, and we shall share. And we'll start
Share and share alike.
yes, and here is New York Central Park, and you can see, as Joe was talking about this a little while ago, there was actually a fairly significant area of showers and even embedded thunderstorms over west central and central sections of New Jersey, moving northeastward. However, with time, this area has diminished considerably, and so it does not look like we're going to be seeing much of anything. If we do see anything out of this, it would primarily be over, well, portions of the immediate New York area, maybe part of Nassau County, westernmost Nassau County, and a few spots in the lower Hudson Valley. But as you can see, this activity is kind of fading out as we move through the coming hours. So this was as I want to use the $5 term here, diurnally active. In other words, this is an area that basically was built upon the heat of the late afternoon sun, but the sun is now drifting down into the western sky. The temperatures are falling, and as a result, with the cooling, we're seeing the showers and storms begin to diminish. Let's go further south and west. We'll go to we'll go to Dover Air Force Base, Ellendale, and you can see that there's a pretty good area, a pretty good cluster of showers and storms over Amish country, actually, near Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and into parts of southeastern PA, York, for example. Those areas also moving on a southwest and northeast trajectory. But it looks like Philadelphia is kind of in a hole between the area that is moved into northern New Jersey and is fading out, and the other area that I just pointed out over Amish country. That too is significant, but also moving on a path that looks like it will pass north of the Philadelphia area. A couple of spotty storms over portions of central Maryland, and if we continue southbound, let's go into Roanoke, Virginia, Floyd County, and you can see again hit and miss showers and storms. You know, where they do occur, you may get a brief heavy downpour for about 2 or 3 minutes, but for the most part, much of Virginia right now, and also adjacent West Virginia, pretty much out in the clear. No real weather problems to speak of. Now, I do want to go down to one spot. And last night, if you remember, we were looking at what were we looking at, Joe? Those two lines that kind of joined together.
Oh, that was in
Uh,
Alabama
that
and
was in Alabama.
Mississippi.
Well, we have something now in Oklahoma that is pretty, at least to look to me, pretty impressive.
Yes, it
And
is.
watch this. Here you go. Look at that. Look at that line. And this again is a band of showers and embedded thunderstorms. I am sure some of those are rather potent with gusty winds and also vivid and dangerous lightning, heavy downpours. But it just literally comes together right before your eyes. We're looking at a 3 hour radar loop. And so this line seems to be getting more and more active by the minute. And also, again, is pressing southward now. This is an area that is moving basically from north northwest to south southeast. But that again is a pretty impressive area right there. Let's go back to the east. Let's go into the area around Tennessee and Kentucky, and you can see that there are again showers and a few thunderstorms. The evening wears on, though. A lot of these are beginning to again fade out as the temperatures slowly but surely begin to drop. One more spot I'll go to, and that is in adjacent North Carolina. And we'll go to Raleigh, Durham. And in Raleigh, Durham, we see, again, widely scattered, almost sporadic like activity. Not really much going on in North Carolina proper, although, again, a few of those localized storms taking shape over portions of Virginia, central Virginia, and western sections of Virginia as well. And
Oh,
any place else you'd like to go, Joe?
no, I think that covers it. I'm just going to just touch on that Oklahoma line for a moment, just to point out that there are some flash flood warnings and a severe thunderstorm warning box that's up there at the moment. And the part that extends down through West Texas is producing several flash flood warning boxes that you see there. And also, we've got some heavier downpours going on basically along and either side of I-25 in New Mexico and going up into Colorado with a few thunderstorms and one flash flood warning box. And there's one other area in northern Missouri and into southern Illinois and Indiana, not really producing much in the way of any watches or warnings. We do, by the way, just really quick, with the thunderstorms that are right now in southeast Pennsylvania. I just want to mention this. We just
Yeah,
get tornado.
that's the area I said I live, like over Lancaster and York, Amish country in southeast PA.
Yeah, we have a tornado warning that went out for Baltimore and Harford counties in Maryland. And this was at 13 minutes ago. So this was at 7:39. The warning, the radar that I have, kind of the actual radar shot is not in real time. It's just slightly delayed. So I'm not seeing. Oh, there it is. I see the red box that just went up there. There are also some severe thunderstorm warnings in Maryland and in southeastern Pennsylvania. The one in uh, East Pennsylvania is in Schuylkill, Skykill, I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's
Well,
there.
there might be if it's the way it's pronounced in Philadelphia, then it's Schuylkill.
Oh, Schuylkill. Okay, so Schuylkill,
It looks like
Pennsylvania, Schuylkill County in Pennsylvania, and also in Centra, Centre, Clinton, and Lycoming counties. We have a severe thunderstorm warning that's in effect at 7:53 p.m. Eastern Time. But folks, if you're watching this on a replay later tonight, obviously the radars are dated, so you want to go to weather.gov to your local National Weather Service office to get the latest in what's going on with severe weather. There's a lot of storms up in western New York too. A lot of big thunderstorms, one over Rochester, and then another one that's just kind of nosing its way toward Syracuse and Binghamton, part of a broken line. So that's where all the activity seems to be at the moment. The Storm Prediction Center has a marginal risk for isolated severe thunderstorms, and I think that's fair for much of central and western New York, the western half of New Jersey, all of Pennsylvania, Maryland, Delaware, Northern Virginia, West Virginia, Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, Illinois, Missouri, Arkansas, Western Kentucky, Western Tennessee, a small portion of northwestern Mississippi, southern Oklahoma, and into West Texas. Also, a marginal risk in southwest New Mexico and southeast Arizona, and a marginal risk in northern California and in southern Oregon. Now, tomorrow, SPC has a marginal risk that extends from Mississippi northeastward up the Appalachians all the way up into southern Maine. A slight risk being indicated for uh, parts of northern Virginia, just about all of northern Virginia, most of Maryland, all of Delaware, all of New Jersey, east and southeast PA, and just kind of touching the Hudson Valley in New York City. There's no
you
elevated
know this
tornado.
this looks very familiar. If I'm not mistaken, we had almost an exact duplicate of this outlook, this convective outlook tomorrow. We almost had something exactly the same in the last week. I can't remember exactly the date. This is my age now. Everything is all melding together. But I'm sure that last week we had a similar situation where we had the area of slight risk, almost edging right up into just barely the lower end of the New York City metropolitan area.
And the next day, they moved the slight risk all the way up to Vermont, New Hampshire, and into Maine, if I recall. So,
Something
but
like that.
wouldn't be a shocker if we wind up seeing that area expanded a little bit for tomorrow. Small areas of marginal risk in western South Dakota and western Nebraska, also covering eastern Idaho, southwest Montana, and northwestern Wyoming for tomorrow. Day three, not much. A marginal risk across Montana, central Idaho, and into western Oregon. We actually have no thunderstorm risk at all from northern New Jersey and Long Island northward. And then it just kind of, they've got this narrow area that goes down through West Virginia and across Kentucky, Tennessee, southern Illinois, southern Indiana, into eastern Missouri, where there are no thunderstorms, but they got general thunderstorms forecast on either side. WPC's rainfall forecast still pretty heavy along the Gulf Coast, 5 inches plus, additional on top of what's been already fallen in the last couple of days, and several inches extending inland into the Florida Peninsula. with 1.5 to 2 inch amounts into southern Georgia and southern Alabama. Up and down the East Coast, it's basically 3/4 of an inch to 1.5 inches. And always remember that when we're dealing here with convection, you could wind up with 50% more locally. You could wind up with 50% more, 100% more, or even 200% more, depending on how the thunderstorms behave. We also are looking at 1/2 to 3/4 inch amounts in the northern Great Lakes and into the northern plains, and also West Texas and New Mexico, because there's still this Pacific moisture and some of the moisture left over from Barry that's kind of getting trained northward. It's more from the Pacific side, though, where we see a lot of moisture since the tropics there have been somewhat on the busy side. So not much has changed. Uh, as far as the next five or 6 days, Joe, it's been pretty consistent. These storms die out overnight, although they do stay alive in northern New York and move up into northern Vermont and New Hampshire. Then we have the setup with the upper trough and front that's trying to pass through for tomorrow. And actually, the European does even have some showers around tomorrow morning. So it'll be interesting to see if it's one of those situations where it destabilizes the atmosphere so that when the main event comes, the atmosphere is not as unstable as it could be. But still, the model does generate a rather good looking line from northern Georgia into Alabama, northern Georgia up the Appalachians into central Pennsylvania at 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, and then it starts to shift it eastward. By 5 o'clock, there's some big cells in northern New Jersey and in western Connecticut, also in part in Maryland, and extending down into Virginia, western North Carolina, eastern Tennessee, eastern Kentucky, West Virginia, and then they just sort of fall apart on top of us. But the European wants to fire up some storms during the overnight Tuesday night. It looks like this little front here is going to get hung up and actually generate a couple of big cells, if you want to believe it, on Long Island and in parts of central and South Jersey, and still having them hanging around Wednesday morning. But then after that, they should go away. So I would think that Wednesday maybe starts off with leftover clouds and then we go to sunshine. Thursday, we've got that upper low Joe talked about earlier that's dropping down into New England, and that's going to probably bring, the model's been coming and going with this, Joe. On some runs, it's got an east-west line moving southward from upstate New York and reaching the coast Thursday afternoon and evening. The day run today has the line at 2 o'clock, but then it kind of disappears by the time we get to 8 o'clock. So I think the course of least regret is you got to put a mention for some thunderstorms for Thursday, and then Friday this looks good. Low humidity, a nice northwest wind, sunshine, temperatures in the low to mid 80s with low dew points, and in fact, the nice weather is going to be up and down the eastern seaboard and all the way west, the west of the Mississippi, where there's hardly anything going on as far as showers and thunderstorms are concerned for Friday. Even Florida dries out. We do see some storms up in the northern plains that move into the western lakes, but Saturday, nothing. Uh, Southwest winds and more humid. Sunday, nothing. And then maybe a little weather front that comes through next Monday. So nothing major. Most of the country is not going to see anything major going on for the rest of this week, other than these severe weather areas that we're dealing with. Tomorrow's probably going to be the busiest severe weather day of the week.
And again, don't, still a bit of confusion concerning exactly what that upper low is going to do as it passes across New England later on this week, but still maybe potent enough to maybe set off not just maybe a couple of showers, but maybe some low top convection, maybe an odd thunderstorm here and there. But again, all of that will disappear and set the stage for what will turn out to be a very nice, lovely, comfortable day coming up for the 4th of July on Friday. And then again, it's just, the fact that the area of low pressure, the upper level area of low pressure, is going to be relatively progressive and moving on out, and will allow for a return to heat and humidity for the remainder of the regular weekend, Saturday and Sunday. So as much as it's going to be comfortable here on Friday, by Sunday, it could very well be 3H weather, hazy, hot, humid, with temperatures at or above 90. So we do have some changeable conditions coming up between now and the end of this upcoming weekend, Joe.
Yep. Let me just check really quick. In the land of the tropics. So just hang on a second. And they're still kind of highlighting that area that's in the northeast Gulf and off the southeast coast and over Florida. And they just said an area of low pressure could develop from this weakening front by the weekend over the Atlantic waters off the southeast coast of but and maybe some gradual tropical or subtropical development could occur after that as the low moves very little. So they only have a 20% chance of anything developing. In the Pacific, oh, we have tropical storm Flossie, Joe Flossie. Um,
We've had a Flossie out there.
yeah, back in the 50s, right? In the 50s.
No, I think we actually had in the late 70s. I think there was a Flossie. Now we're talking about an Atlantic storm. This is a Pacific storm.
Right.
So yeah,
Flossie is pretty much south of the Mexican coast, like the last couple of storms have been. This one's moving northwest at 10, parallel to the coastline, and probably will become a hurricane before it eventually weakens. I don't see. Let me see where they're taking it here. Um, all right, I'm going to bring let me just show you everybody. Oh, you can still see it here. So you see they have it becoming a hurricane and just kind of moving northwestward, just staying offshore and then gradually going away as a remnant depression by the time we get to the end of the week. So there you go.
there you go.
Okay, so Briller Jeopardy as we finish off the last 5 states with regards to the lowest temperature, I'm sorry, the highest temperature ever recorded in these states. And we will begin tonight with Virginia. Virginia.
I will say for Virginia, 118.
And you will have been way too high. Serenity Steve, LA. That's a very interesting. I don't know who some of these. I saw somebody mention that some of these handles that Google has changed are unrecognizable. So I don't know if you're a regular that just got stuck with a weird name here, or that is your handle. Serenity Steve, if you're new to the show, welcome. 111, very close. Frank, 2130, 111, very close. But Davy, full 99, and Vincent Croce, a buck 10, Joe, a buck 10.
110?
110.
Wow. I got to tell you, I would have thought it would for Virginia.
Yeah,
I would have thought it would be higher than that.
yeah. Let's go to the other side of the country and go to the state of Washington. Washington State.
Eastern sections of Washington State is in the Columbia Basin, which could really heat up. So I'm going to say 115.
Well, you were very right in going up, but you didn't go up far enough. Rich Rothmansky is, you know, in the ballpark there at a buck 21, 121. Tyler Fegus is 117. You have to go higher. Frank Scalera 70-76, 120. A buck 20
Wow.
is the correct answer. So there you go. Let's go back to the east now, Joe, and go to West Virginia. West Virginia.
Uh, well, Virginia was only what, 110?
Correct.
How much higher could West Virginia be? It actually could even be a little lower than 110 because West Virginia is a very mountainous state. I'm going to say 108.
And you would be wrong on all counts. uh, Tyler Fieger very close at a buck 113. Rich Rothmansky nails it, and Frank R 2130 112 112. Okay, now on to the land of cheese, and
Wisconsin?
we're talking about Wisconsin, where
Yeah.
Kerry butter is is illegal. Wisconsin.
Oh God. Again, another place which could be deceptive. I'm going to say 114.
Well, ring the bell for yourself, and for
Oh,
Magnolia,
hey,
Magnolia P 5824 and Frank R, all at a 114. That is correct. And the final state, and thanks to Scott Briller, by the way, for putting this all together. The final state tonight is Wyoming. Wyoming.
here's a state again that could be deceptive. I I'm going to say I'm going to say 121.
And you'd be too high, but Serenity Steve LA 116. He nails it. 116. 116. Well, you got one tonight on the nose,
Yeah. Well, thank you.
so there's
Thank you.
that.
Now you know what
Uh,
tomorrow is.
Tomorrow is July 1st.
Yes, but it's more than July 1st.
Okay, I have
I'll
no
give you
idea.
a hint. I'll give you a hint. If you're a Met fan, you know absolutely what tomorrow is.
I'm not a Met fan, so I don't know what
Okay.
tomorrow is.
Well, how many of you on the chat board are Met fans? If you are, post what July 1st is.
Post what It's
There you
Bobby
go.
Bonilla
Seven.
Day. Oh, that's right. So that's the day where he gets his check or something?
Now you can't. People are wondering why does this man, who when he played for the Mets, he played for the Mets twice actually, and both times he didn't live up to expectations. The Mets, the first time the Mets signed him, they actually, I think it was Frank Cashin, who was the general manager. He bought out a restaurant, a big fancy restaurant in New York. Nobody could go into the restaurant. The whole restaurant was his and Bobby Bonilla's. And they sat in this near empty restaurant and negotiated a contract which Bonilla signed for the Mets. And he was terrible. And then after he left the Mets, he went to the Florida Marlins, won a world championship with the Marlins, came back to the Mets and had another subpar season. That was in 1999. Now, when he had that second subpar season, the Mets released him, but they still owed him 5.9 million. Now you're into financial, you know finances, Joe.
Yeah.
You talk about the stock market and what I tell me how or why they made this deal with Bobby Bonilla. Bonilla and his agent offered the Mets in this now again, he's owed 5.9 million by the Mets,
Right.
and he and his agent offered the Mets a deal. He would defer payment for a decade. So this is 1999. So he wouldn't get paid until starting in 2011. He would start getting paid by the Mets, and the Mets would pay him an annual paycheck of 1.19 millions every year on July 1st, starting in 2011 and ending, get this now, not until 2035, another 10 more years of this to go for Bobby Bonilla. And that added up to a total payout of 29.8. How do you make a
So
deal like that?
so
You
hold
owe
on.
him five you
So
owe
he
him
gets
5.9 million and he
right.
says, let's defer payment, and the Mets end up paying him 29.8 instead
All
of
right, so
5.9.
they deferred payment for how many years?
Well, from 2011 to 2035.
No, 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 but so he started
No, well,
getting
they
paid.
deferred payment. They deferred payment for 10 years,
Okay,
and
so they
and
put
and and
basically $6 million where he didn't get a dime, for 10 years where he didn't get a dime. And then he gets, he's getting a check to 2035. Yeah, I mean, inflation and interest, as Tyler Fenger points out, they probably put the money in some sort of an annuity kind of thing, and um, you know,
well,
maybe they
the
I'm trying to
owner, the then
figure
owner,
what the
the then
return on
owner of the
that
Mets,
is.
the then owner of the Mets, not the guy who owns them now,
Right.
who's like a multi-zillionaire or whatever, but Fred Wilpon, who owned the Mets back then, he accepted that deal of deferral mostly because he was heavily invested with Bernie Madoff. Remember him, the Ponzi scheme operator?
Yes, yes.
And the 10% returns he thought he was getting on his investment with Madoff outweighed the 8% interest that the Mets would be paying on Bonilla's initial 5.9 million. So as a result, the payout was the subject of inquiry during the Madoff investment scandal when it came to light in 2008. But my question to everybody on the chat board, to you, Joe, to everybody on the chat board, all of you out there who are lurkers right now, how many of you would like to receive a payout of 1.19 million every July 1st for the next 10 years? That totals, by the way,
So
$11,900,000.
I'm sorry, he's getting how much every year?
1.19 million.
Okay, I'm sorry, Joe. Say it one more time. 1.19 million.
Right.
Okay.
$1,190,000 every July 1st for the next 10 years. That'll total
So
for the next,
the original amount was 6 million,
right,
and they deferred it for how many years again?
10 years.
So for 10 years. Okay. So so now he started getting paid in 2011. He's
Right.
getting paid $1 million. Let's just use round numbers here. So he's getting paid $1 million a year from 2011 to 2035, which is 24 years. So 24 years. So, and the original was 6 million, and the 6 million, yeah, I mean, 6 million doubles to 20 million. So, and I'm sorry to ask this again because my brain just like I forget things. So, the deferral was how many years again? 15?
It was 10 years.
10 years.
Right.
Okay.
He was
So,
owed 5.9 million, or rounded off to
so
6
over
million.
10 years, if that money that was deferred was, let's say they invested it in something that got them back 10% a year, which is not impossible. Okay. Uh, Even though that sounds like a little bit of a high number for 10 years, that original amount, the 6 million, would double every 7 years. So that six becomes 12, and then basically becomes $20 million starting at 2011. So in the meantime, it's still earning interest along the way while he's getting the payout. So basically, that's what they did. And
Unbelievable.
I'm sure, the Wilpons got some kind of write off that by doing it that way. So I'm sure both sides are happy with it.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, I know about the Mets, but I know Bonilla must be, you know, head
It's
over
like that
heels.
deferral check, those deferral checks that you and I get.
Yeah,
From the places that we've worked.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Exactly is right. Um, yeah, well, you know what? That's
Since we're on a Met note tonight, I just want to also mention that today is New York Met legend Ron Swoboda's birthday. And, this really makes me feel old, Joe.
I know.
Ron Swoboda turns 81 years young today.
Wow.
And I my two great uncles, my uncle Eddie and my uncle Larry, treated me to my very first World Series when the Mets won in the series in 1969. It was Game 4, and that was the game where Swoboda made what many consider to be the greatest catch in the history of the World Series. That incredible diving catch off of Brooks Robinson, which saved the game for the Mets, and it just an amazing play. So now, that was 1969. I was at that game with my uncles. 7 years later, I was going semi regularly down to Channel 2 in New York, WCBS, because I was a good friend of Joe Whitty. Many of you may remember Joe Whitty as the evening meteorologist on Channel 2 back then, back in the 70s.
Does he
And
ever
I
respond? Did he ever respond to
he
your
has not
emails?
responded. I have not heard from him. But back then, I saw him on a semi-regular basis. So here I am with Joe Whitty. We're walking down a corridor at Channel 2, and who's coming from the other direction but Ron Swoboda? At that time in the 70s, Ron Swoboda was the sportscaster for Channel 2. And I'm seeing him, and Joe Whitty says, "Hey, Ron, how are you?" He says, "I want you to meet a friend of mine, Joe Rayo." And we shook hands. Let me tell you something also. Ron Swoboda is a big man. I don't know, maybe some of you that didn't look all that big on television. He was a big man. And the grip that he had when I shook hands with him, and my heart was going like the thump, the thump. I mean, he was my idol as when I was young, a Met fan. So a couple of weeks later, I'm back at the TV station visiting with Joe Whitty, and I told him I brought my ticket from that '69 World Series. And I said, "You think maybe I can get Ron Swoboda to sign it?" He says, "Well, let's go and ask him." So we went into the Channel 2 newsroom, walked over to Ron's desk. He was typing a story that for that night newscast. He says, "Hey, Ron, you remember my good friend Joe Rayo? He was here a couple of weeks ago." And Ron looks up and he says, "Oh, yeah. Hi, Joe." And I said, "Mr. Swoboda, I would be honored if you would autograph this." And I held up the ticket. And as soon as he saw the ticket, Ron's eyes lit up. A big smile crossed his face. He said, "Oh, wow." He grabbed a pen, took the ticket, and he inscribed it on the back of the ticket. "I had it all the way, Ron Swoboda." I thanked him. I said,
It's
thank you so
nice.
much." We shook hands. He gave me a wink and he said, "It was my pleasure." Fast forward 10 years later. Now I'm working with my wife, Renata. I don't know if she's on the chat board right now or not, but the two of us, we were working at a private weather forecasting service in Queens. One of the things we had to do was morning drive radio weathercast for stations up and down the eastern seaboard. And Renata, at that time, was doing the weather. She was the morning drive weather gal on WTIX in New Rochelle. New Rochelle.
Uh,
New Orleans. Joe's the old
well,
stomping.
just to put this, I mean, I worked with Ron Swoboda for a short time when I was in New Orleans before he got fired.
Was that at WVUE?
Yes.
Okay. So he was at WVUE. My wife was doing the weather on radio on WTIX, and the morning drive guy tells her Ron Swoboda is going to appear on the morning show in a half an hour. He said, "So we want you to ask him a question."
And
So
what
she
year
comes
was
running.
and what year was this?
This was like 1985.
I was there.
Yeah.
I was
So
there in New Orleans
she
in
comes
'85.
running out of the studio. She comes running out of the studio where she's doing the radio weather, and she comes running up to me and she says, "Ron Swoboda, I'm supposed to talk to him in a half an hour. He's down in New Orleans." She says, "What do I ask him?" And I told her, I said, "Why don't you ask him about his Chinese step grandfather?" And she says, "Oh, come on, be serious." And I said, "I am. He actually has a step grandfather who's Chinese." So, sure enough, after she finishes the forecast, the morning drive host introduces her to Ron Swoboda. And he says, "Oh, you have anything you'd like to ask him?" And that's when my wife says, "How's your Chinese step grandfather?" The studio crew at the radio station resonated with laughter. Everybody's going nuts, like, "What? What did you say?" What? But Ron Swoboda says, "Wait a minute, she's right. She's absolutely right. I do have a Chinese step grandfather named Arthur." He said, "My grandmother used to work as a waitress at a Chinese restaurant in Baltimore, and the owner of the restaurant became my step grandfather." So she comes out of the studio, and her eyes are like rolling around. He says, "It was probably the highlight of the whole morning show when I asked him that question." He says, "How did you know about that?" And I said, "Hey, I know my Mets." So, Ron,
Nice.
I don't know if you'll happy birthday to Ron Swoboda and his Chinese step grandfather,
Happy
wherever he
birthday.
might
Happy
be.
birthday to Ron. That's really nice. It's a good memory. It's a beautiful memory to have. And
Yeah,
it really is. All right, I think we're going to wrap it up here and let you all know that we'll be here tomorrow night at our usual time, 7:35 p.m. Don't forget, we got severe weather that'll be going on tomorrow, so probably I'll have some of it going on at showtime. So we'll see you then. Nighty
good
night,
night, folks.
everyone.